What's up guys, Ryan from AntScapes. In today's video we've got the Crematogaster Scutellaris. First of all, I do have to apologise for the amount of time it's took for me to release a video, and secondly the amount of time it's took me to release an update on the Scutellaris. It has been mental busy in my life, certain things going on. I'm still working 50+ hour weeks as well in my job, so obviously that takes all of my time up, but either way I am buzzing to be back and I can't wait to get this video out for you all. If you do like the video, remember, drop a like, subscribe, and as always, peace and love. I am out. Well, it's been an adventure with these ladies. I've gone through 2 escapes now. One of them was on the previous update and one on this update at the very end, because as I was editing this video, that's when they decided to have the mass breakout. The second thing I went through with these, other than the second escape, or third thing we'll say, is parasitic mites. I got those just after making the setup, as it wasn't fully developed, but I did struggle with parasitic mites for around 3 weeks, and I did lose almost half the colony, I'd say. I was finding dead worker piles everywhere, workers struggling, and honestly it was the worst sight you could physically see. Now I did try the lemon method. At first I was putting in lemons, but I also breed parasitic mites. Now I was adding parasitic mites. The difficulty with that is parasitic mites prefer a more damp environment, so to get them to physically stay in there and keep countering these, it was tough, to say the least. But I got there after about 3 weeks, adding some every single day. I got there and got rid of them. But I apologise for the footage. I did accidentally delete a lot of stuff because I do film and do all my editing on my phone, and sometimes I do accidentally delete things thinking it's something else or another piece of footage from a different tank. Either way, there wasn't a massive or great deal going on. After the recovery, everything that was thrown at these ladies, they did start to dwindle in numbers, and I'll be honest, there was like moments where I was genuinely starting to think that it might be the end for them. But as I've mentioned, this colony has just been robust as anything for me, and I don't want to jinx anything, so I'll just keep it at that. It's been an absolute massive enjoyment for me keeping these ladies, because they've most definitely kept me on my toes. I'm trying to think of how many workers would be left at this point after everything that happened, and I think there was around 200-300, potentially a little bit more, a little bit less either side. I'm not too sure, but I did notice when they got the parasitic mites, the numbers did, it felt like almost halved. They did really struggle from that. But then you're talking a month later, after I added the heat pad, they must have had some brood there, or quite a lot of brood ready, and this heat pad must have sped everything up perfectly. It was only a month or so later I noticed a huge increase in numbers, potentially 200-300 extra, probably even more. It was almost like the queen just went in hyper mode. This wasn't even the phase of the amount of brood that was actually in there. Now what I'm filming here is one side of the drainage layer, where the heat pad is. However, they don't always push the brood on the heat pad because it actually gets too warm sometimes, especially recently with this warm summer months. So there's a lot of the time where they actually won't physically have any brood pushed against the glass, and I know for a fact that this was a very small amount to what they actually have right under that drainage layer, because they also nest in that giant log in the center, which has all of the air plants on. So I know there's going to be a hell of a lot more workers in here. But as the numbers were increasing, I knew I had to do something to really test to see how many there actually was. So what I did is I stopped feeding them sugar snaps for around 3 or 4 days. I kept the water in there, but that was on the left side. So as I filled it about 3/4 full, I put that to the right side along with the water and protein at the same time, as I didn't feed them for again 3 to 4 days. But anyway, you will see what actually truly happens when I starve them for just a short period of time, and the reaction I get. Then things really started to pick up, and I was kind of thinking to myself, well, this is the reaction I was looking for, but to the scale in the next few clips, I kind of didn't expect it to go as well as it did, because it did give me a real reflection on how many were below the surface. But as you can imagine, when I started to see numbers like this, I just, inside my heart, I just felt great. Like, to have them like this when they've been through so much was just the best feeling ever. I really am glad that, you know, I got past everything else. You will see just a small escape at the end, but either way, you know, that wasn't actually, by the time everything was done, I did actually manage to recoup a lot of them, and I definitely learned from the first time they escaped. So yeah, I mean, the second time round, it was pretty smooth sailing, and I don't want to jinx it, but you know, I hope they don't break out again. But yeah, it was really smooth sailing compared to the first time, because the first time was just horrendous. But what I did is I decided to feed them 5 crickets. I topped up the liquid feeder. I was pretty much ready. I moved everything closer to the right, and then yeah, the reaction I got was just epic. And then in the next frame, I show the 2 pinkies that I actually add in. This was 2 days later. They went through that whole liquid feeder in 2 days. It wasn't full though, it was kind of almost near the top. I was just kind of seeing how much they would take. But yeah, this time I've made sure that I filled it almost completely full. But I will show a little bit around the tank here. I want to show you sort of areas where they're pushing through, the traffic's coming from. As you can see, the 2 pinkies have just been added in. There's only a few workers on them at the moment. So I thought to myself, I'll show you how it is now, and then the time lapse will reflect truly how they are, or how quick they devour 2 pinkies within a day. The main run is from here, the feeding area on the right against that heat mat. It's also obviously where some of the brood is sometimes, not all the time, and you will see a few clips at the end as well where they're not always using it, as an example. But this is the nest at the moment. Everything's going well in terms of the air plants, everything. I did have a cactus die off, the smaller one. I buried it a little bit too much, but the other one's doing absolutely fine. Succulents, again, they're doing great. They're nesting in that top right corner as well, so a lot of the traffic goes from right to the left, and just behind this is where they are sort of moving along. Left side of the tank as well, they've got some pockets dug in that area. You can see that is one of the areas they escaped from, and you can see how they're piling sand and sticking it to the actual oil. So I have to keep wary of that every single couple of days now. I have to go over and reapply all of the barriers on that tank, so I am really needing to do something. But I am going to let this run, so it's about 1.5 minutes long. I'll let you watch this and the wax worms. But as you can see there, there's an isopod. It's just an empty carcass or a shell of what used to be. But as I mentioned previously at the start of the video, it's why I can't keep isopods in here. I tend to find that they do constantly hound them until either the isopod gives up or they just end up murdering it. On the left side here, you can see again that nice trail coming from that piece of wood, and then underneath that piece of wood as well. But the numbers just go absolutely wild. You're talking another 5 or 6 crickets the following day. And then another full sugar feeder, which, you know, they thoroughly enjoyed. But these ladies are just increasing in numbers at such a rate that I really am going to have to consider adding another setup onto this, which they can expand into or use as kind of like an outworld with a normal one. I have added now more substrate in this tank, and I will show towards the end where they do escape or how they escaped. I didn't get a huge amount of footage because I was just in panic mode at the time until I started to hoover almost all of them up. You know, at this stage I walked into the room, was like, oh dear, and then just went straight into work on hoovering up ants and cleaning ants for the next 2 or 3 hours. This was it. Once I'd got loads of them up, I hoovered it up, and then once I took the tank off the rack, and this is where they were really, as you can see, just massive pockets of ants. So I had to get the hoover, got them all back in, and this is how the tank looks afterwards. And unfortunately, it's not the design I wanted. I didn't have A, the right gravel, B, the right hardscape, so all of the contrasts clash massively. But you can see here, that was the substrate previously, and there I added more than double the depth, so even more surface area inside the tank for them to nest and dig and live in, which is great because I know they will take full advantage of that. And if you look there, you can physically see. But then what I also did was I added some pieces of wood towards the back, but there, just a massive pile of wood dust. So they have been taking it out, putting it there and just mounding it up. I have noticed as well that they're using these little chippings of wood that they're taking out and taking it below ground. So they must be using it for the brood below and also taking brood up inside these twigs for development as well. So I think the reason was most definitely because they needed more nesting space. So I'll put this twig in now, and I'll put that just slightly to the right. I'm disappointed with how it looks, but either way at this point as well, it's just, I'm happy that the ants are happy, and that's a number one. Although it doesn't look as good as I would like it to, you know, the ants are going to take full advantage of these pieces or these branches being in there. And if we take a look towards the back of the setup, you can see the little tunnels or intricate tunnels they've started to build within the sand, and you can see how they're using that. Now, yeah, this tank is just well weathered, you know, it's worn in. Sand has started to fall between the cracks and between the dirt, a little bit in the drainage layer, but not all that will be there. Plus, this is a pretty arid setup. The most I do is mist it down every 2 weeks, and I'll only really mist it in one area, so a little bit of that runs into the drainage layer and then sort of gives pockets or certain pockets of it a little bit more humidity. And a few days later, everything seems to be getting settled in. They've gone through a full jelly pot in that time frame as well. You can see I've also fed them a roach. This is where all the dead is. They also leave sawdust here, but they do reuse that material, and I will show that in a second. I'm hoping now with all the extra things in there, like the twigs, the branches, the deeper substrate, that these ladies will start to explode even more in numbers. If you haven't yet as well, by the way, remember we do have a Discord server. It is in every single description, so I'll make sure it's in this description, but the link to the Discord server will be there. There's a load of ant people, animal people, all in that group, lovely, and people I can call friends to this day. They're all awesome, so make sure you go over to that Discord server. If you haven't checked my store out yet, remember to check my store, and remember to smash that like button if you did like the video. Subscribe as well. As always from me, peace and love. I'm out.